Welcome to the 7th episode of the NieR podcast, recorded on April 5th, 2020. I'm Pfeil, and today's episode is a special edition. I missed a podcast a couple weeks back due to the societal changes from COVID-19, so we're going to make some ground up today. In this episode, we're going to chat about a bunch of things. There was a Nintendo Mini Direct over the past couple weeks that came out, so we'll chat about that. Animal Crossing launched, as did Doom Eternal, and I have both of those games, so I'm going to chat a bit about those. There was a NieR Replicant announcement, and also Mario rumors, so we'll get into those before moving on to the middle of the podcast, where we're going to take a break to meditate, center our thoughts, and de-stress to some music from the video game world. And then today, in this special edition, we are going to add a lot of games to the list. Specifically, we're going to add 16 games. Normally, I only add 5, but in this episode, we're adding 16. 15 of those games are mystery games, all from the NES catalog. You could technically, if you're watching on YouTube or found the link via my website, you could look up the timestamps and see what the games are, but if you want to be on the edge of your seat for the remainder of this podcast, then hang out and we'll see what those 15 mystery games are, all culminating in the 16th game being added to the list, this episode's featured game, Mega Man 2. For those of you watching on YouTube, you're watching me play Animal Crossing or Doom Eternal or something else. I don't know. As of the time of recording, I haven't figured out what I'm going to play yet. But if you are listening on Apple, Google, or Spotify, you can head over to NieRDarDocs.com to find the video version of this podcast if you want to see what I am playing. Before we get into the games, I quickly want to discuss COVID-19 or the coronavirus. This really sucks. It sucks being stuck at home. It sucks not being able to go anywhere. I'm personally an introvert, so I don't mind being at home, but once you're at home for so long, it starts to wear on you. And I realize that I am one of the luckier ones. First off, I've got my health, as does my family. If any of you have been directly impacted by the virus, if you are sick or if you know someone you are sick, well, my thoughts are with you, hoping you can pull through. I'd like to think that if you are doing what you can to stay healthy, washing your hands, don't touch your face, stay out of the crowd, and if you do get sick, do what you can. It looks like you can pull through. So here's hoping for that. For those of you who are unfortunate enough to be without a job right now, well, cheer up. Things will turn around soon. I promise. We're all in this together. Like I said, I'm fortunate enough to be able to telecommute at my job, so that's great. But I do know people who are not working right now. I know people who have the coronavirus, and so I realize that being stuck at home is not the worst thing in the world. So stay positive. Society will return to normal, if there ever is such a thing as normal for society. And hopefully we'll be stronger and more considerate as a result. So we'll see where things go. In the meantime, let's get back to the games. So there was a Nintendo Mini Direct last week, I think it was, and the internet had been hyping this one up for a while. I personally was very much looking forward to it. I was hoping to react to it, thinking there was going to be a lot of really awesome announcements in there, and there were. But when it actually came out, and it kind of came out as like a shadow drop, from what I recall, like it wasn't really announced, and then it was just, here it is. I just didn't feel like reacting, so if you were looking forward to that, my apologies. I didn't feel like doing it, so sorry. I'm not going to go through all the announcements, just a few of them, just the ones that I particularly was interested in, the first of which being Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition, which is now coming out on May 29th. I didn't like Xenoblade Chronicles 2. I thought it was dumb. I just could not get into it, and I've heard that the first game is so much better. And visually speaking, yes, it's got a little bit more. I mean, it's still anime, but it's a little bit more realistic anime, if that makes sense, as opposed to Chronicles 2. The combat looks a lot better, although if it's similar, I don't know how interested I'm going to be. I'm going to have to check it out. I'm going to have to do my research. But Xenoblade Chronicles on the... Oh gosh, was it the Wii or the Wii U? Well, anyway, it was a game that I missed, and I know it got a lot of praise, so I'll look into this one. We'll see. They announced the 6th DLC character for Smash coming in June. Well, they did and they didn't. So they didn't announce specifically who the character is, but they did say it's a character from ARMS, which it's like, okay, all right, cool, I guess. I don't know. An ARMS character should have been in the roster from day one, not a DLC character. But it is what it is. And the last thing that I want to chat about from the Direct, there were a few different cool things in there, but the one that caught me by surprise was Bravely Default 2. Now, I think this got announced at the Game Awards 2019, so this wasn't a new announcement per se, but they did show a bit more about the game, and they released a demo that day, which I downloaded and I played for, I don't know, maybe 10 minutes. I didn't get very far. Enough to walk around the town and try out one of the battles. And it feels a lot like Octopath Traveler to me. The good parts of Octopath Traveler. Specifically, some of the things that come to mind. It has that blur effect when you're walking around a town to where whatever's like close to your character is like in sharp view, but things that start to blend into the background get real blurry. And I really like that technique. It doesn't work for everything, but in this particular game and for Octopath Traveler, I think it looks really, really good. And then the combat is similar in that in Octopath Traveler, and I forget how you do it, it's been a while, but you build up, I think it was BP, I think it was battle points, and then you can like unleash 3 or 4 attacks at a time using the BP. I think you accrue those just by attacking and not using them. I can't remember in Octopath Traveler. In Bravely Default, you have to just straight up defend. So it's interesting because when you're defending, you're not getting hit as hard as you would have otherwise, but you're still getting hit. So it's basically giving your enemies a free shot, and I think that's a really interesting combat system. In a way, it's similar to Souls in the sense that you have to get in there and, block with your shield. You're gonna get hit. Sometimes you have to take a hit to be able to dish out the damage you need to. So I think that's a really interesting system, and I love class systems. The class system in Octopath Traveler was okay, if not a little basic. This one seems like it might be a little basic too. It seems very similar in the sense that you get your, you have a class and a subclass, and from what I can tell, you have regular abilities and passive abilities, and you just have them, but they don't seem to be as interesting as something in like Final Fantasy Tactics, for example, where I guess there's a little bit more to Tactics because it's an SRPG, because you have like the movement abilities, you have your action abilities, you have some passives. There's a few different things you can get in Tactics as opposed to something like this, but we'll see. It caught me by surprise. The story seems pretty mature, I guess. I mean, for a JRPG, it's a JRPG, but it's not like a Dragon Quest. It's a little bit more serious in tone, and it follows the 4 crystal motif, which Final Fantasy 1, which is still not on the list. Someday it will make the list, someday soon, in fact. one of the best games of all time from my perspective. So looking forward to it. Bravely Default 2 doesn't have a release date other than it's coming out in 2020, assuming it doesn't get pushed back because of COVID-19. So we'll see what happens there. I'm going to keep my eye on that game. Let's talk about Animal Crossing for a second. Now, I don't want to go too in-depth into my thoughts because I just hit the credits this morning. I've put in over 60 hours based on my profile, so I'm pretty much at the point where I could quote-unquote review the game, meaning I can add it to the list. So I'm going to add it to the list this year. I'm still debating whether or not I'm going to save it for the end of the year or just go ahead and do it, I guess, in the next podcast. Time will tell. But I do want to talk about a couple things real quick that I really enjoyed that were big quality of life improvements for the game. The first one is Nook Miles. So if you've played an Animal Crossing before, there's really just been one currency, and that's been bells. In this game, there are still bells, and it's a required currency for upgrading your home and for getting buying items at the store and buying clothing. Nook Miles is something in addition. It's a second set of currency that does, a few different things, but at a basic perspective, it does three things. Number one, it unlocks new abilities for you or new enhancements to your character. For example, you can unlock additional baggage space. You can unlock the quick select system for your items, your net and your fishing pole and stuff like that. And it unlocks things, as I've recently discovered, for island. What's it called? Island design, I guess. And there's other things too, but it gives you extra abilities by spending currency to unlock things, which I think is really cool. The second thing it does is it allows you to get to other islands. So I believe in New Leaf, you had to pay, I can't remember if you had to pay bells or how you got to the island in New Leaf. I just remember Captain, you have to talk to him and he takes you there and then he takes you back. In this game, it's the same. You use Nook Miles to get to an island, but all these islands they're not exactly randomly generated, I wouldn't say. I mean, the islands themselves follow, like there's a spiral island, and then there's an island that has just a big river in the middle. Like there's a set amount of islands from what I can tell. The placement of the trees and the fruits that you get and the bugs and all that stuff might be a little different. I'm not sure. But there's a lot of different islands that you can go to get crafting materials, to get some bells, to get whatever it is you're looking for. So that's a nice change of pace if you get bored with your island. Oh, and that's also where you meet some of your villagers that haven't moved into your island yet. Excuse me. I had 3 big bowls of Cinnamon Toast Crunch this morning, so it's causing me to burp a lot. Anyway, so those were 2 things. And then the third thing that Nook Miles is for also getting items that you probably couldn't get otherwise, as far as I can tell, and do-it-yourself recipes. So it is another currency for buying things, but I think across all 3 of those things, it's a nice addition. And the way you get the Nook Miles is a lot of fun too. It's basically, they have a built-in achievement trophy system within the game, and as you complete achievements, you get Nook Miles, which you can then use to unlock stuff. And it's not restricted to just a set amount of achievements. They have like a set of 5 that constantly are refreshing, and they're based on little things like catch fish or catch bugs or plant flowers. And as you do those, you get Nook Miles, and then a new one slides onto the list. So there's like your big achievements, like talk to 50 villagers, and then there's the little ones that are constantly refreshing. So you basically have an infinite supply of Nook Miles. And I think that's a really cool system. I really like what they did there because that adds another layer of end game content, because you're gonna quote unquote beat the game. You're gonna hit the credits before you fill in that entire achievement system. I mean, it's not, unless you purposefully do not progress your game in order to get all of the achievements first, you're going to be playing for well over a year, short of time traveling to be able to get all of those achievements. So I really enjoyed that. And then the second big quality improvement that I want to touch on real quickly is the full island control. So they drip it out to you very slowly, but eventually you can start moving buildings around. You can add a whole lot more bridges and inclines, and what I just recently unlocked was the ability to create paths. And on top of that, using Nook Miles, you can further unlock things like creating ledges, creating water and river areas. So I'm looking forward to playing around with that. I stupidly used a whole bunch of Nook Miles to buy items, thinking I needed to do something to my island to get it to a certain level in order to unlock stuff, but then I found out that I unlocked it anyway, and I just spent 15,000 Nook Miles when I should have held on to them, because now I have about 30,000 Nook Miles that I need to go spend or something like that to unlock all this stuff. So that's gonna be fun. Anyway, I really enjoy being able to tweak the island to what you want it to be, because when you get to an island, you know, at first, when you make your first island, that's it. And if you don't have the foresight to say, oh man, I really wanted to make a theme park here and a garden here, you know, you're going to be dozens of hours into the game before you realize, oh, this island doesn't match what I wanted. And with this system, you can basically recraft the island however you want. So I really enjoy that. I just said the word craft, and it reminded me about the crafting system in this game that I think is another big quality of life improvement, but I'll save that for the list when we get to discussing Animal Crossing. But overall impressions, yeah, it's been a lot of fun. I also picked up Doom Eternal. I have not played it nearly as much as Animal Crossing, but I have played 4 or 5 levels, I think. I'm currently on the level, without doing story spoilers, if that's even such a thing for this game, I'm currently playing the level where you have to the objective is to destroy a giant hell nest of some kind. Gore nest, I think is what it's called, which I have not done yet, but I'm on the level in which you do it. And it's actually the opening area to this level was in, I feel like it was in one of the original gameplay demos of the game that they released a couple years ago. I actually remember back in the TGR days, Matt Mann was still here, and I remember watching the video with him. We did a reaction, either we did a reaction to it, or we did a reaction to something, and then he showed me the other, there were two different videos, and he showed me the other one after. Anyway, it was that long ago, and I remembered seeing that section in the video. This game is very similar to Doom 20... Gosh, when did that game come out? 16? 17? 18? I can't remember now. It plays very similar to that, which is a great thing. I loved that re-envisioning of Doom, and this is basically just more of the same. I think, without remembering too many specifics about the Doom from a few years ago, this seems to basically just retread the same steps, but I'm really enjoying it. I think the two things it does really well, the combat, number one, the frantic, ridiculous combat is awesome, and the exploration, it's not super difficult exploration. There have been a couple times where I'm like, I see it on the minimap. How the heck am I supposed to get there? And I've been tempted to just look it up online, but I've figured it out eventually. But I think that juxtaposition between crazy, stress-inducing, anxiety-inducing combat, and then things quiet down and you can explore for a bit. I really like that roller coaster in this game. It's a lot of fun. It's visually stunning. I feel like the first game looked a little bit better. I feel like this game... so I'm playing it on an OG, literally day one, OG PS4. And I feel like this game was probably built around some of the higher models, the PS4 Pro and the Xbox One X or whatever it's called. But that's okay. I might replay it a bit on the PS5 when that finally comes out. I do think story-wise, at least so far from where I've gotten, this game is not as good as the original. The original, it felt like it had a little bit more focus, because the story in the original, you're basically on Mars most of the time. You do go into hell for a bit, but it's all in this one location, relatively speaking. Within this game, it's sort of like a global romp across the world, and it feels like Halo 2 to me, which I don't say that in a positive way when it comes to the narrative. In Halo 1, you're sort of isolated on this one Halo ring, and while you're going all over the place on the Halo ring, you're in that one place, right? It was the same thing with the first Doom. Other than the parts where you go into hell, you're basically on this one station on Mars the whole time. So there was this sense of isolation there, which is fantastic. I love that kind of stuff. That's why Halo is one of the best games ever made. We'll get to that someday on the list. And the previous Doom did something similar. But then, like Halo 2, now you're back on Earth. Earth is under attack. You're going all over the place. You're jumping around. You're not in one location. You're on Earth. You're on Covenant ships. You are on another Halo ring. You're all over the place. In this game so far, it's very similar. Earth's under attack. You're jumping around to different areas on Earth. I haven't gotten into hell yet, but I'm assuming at some point I will, which is fine. I mean, that's part of Doom. But this just feels like I'm going all over the place, and then I warp back up to my citadel out in space, and it's just... It's fine. That's not a bad concept, but it's reminding me of Halo 2, and I don't like it because I don't have fond memories of Halo 2 from a narrative perspective. So, I guess for now, that's the one thing I'd say bad about Doom Eternal, but I am really enjoying it, and I'm looking forward to beating it. Really quickly, want to talk about this NieR Replicant. So, I'm not sure if it's a remaster or a remake, but they're going to be re-releasing the original NieR. Now, I haven't played the original NieR, and from what I understand, there's two versions. There's Gestalt and Replicant, and Gestalt came out on the Xbox, and that featured a middle-aged man, and Replicant came out on the PlayStation 3, and that featured a younger character, but I think it was the same game. It's just you played different people or something like that. I don't know, but I never played the original NieR. I did play NieR Automata. I played the hell out of that game. That's one of the best games ever made. I feel like I say that about a lot of games these days. But NieR Automata was freaking fantastic, and if this game can live up to that, then I'm all in. So we'll see. I purposefully have not looked very much into NieR Replicant. I don't want to know a whole lot about it, just because I went into NieR Automata pretty blind and my mind was blown. So I want to do the same thing here. I'm not expecting my mind to be blown like NieR Automata. I do, from what I remember when playing that game and looking stuff up, one of the big plot twists in NieR Automata, which I'm not going to say, is something that players of the original game saw and was like, well, that's weird. And then they're like, oh, I guess they're doing this. And then they do something else. So I know kind of I don't know if it's the big plot twist of the game, but I know something that supposedly happens in the original NieR. A couple things, actually. So we'll see. We'll see if this can live up to the expectations that I have of it because of NieR Automata. And lastly, I want to talk about some Mario rumors. Now, even though these are rumors, nothing has been confirmed yet. This is being reported by multiple gaming journalism outlets and a lot of very reputable ones. At this point, this is mostly guaranteed. There might be some slight tweaks to what actually gets announced, but this is very, very, very likely to happen. So you don't have to take this one with a grain of salt. But this year apparently is the 35th anniversary of the Mario franchise, and Nintendo is planning something very, very special. They are going to be bringing most of the Mario catalog to the Switch. Specifically, that includes Mario 64, Super Mario Sunshine, Super Mario Galaxy 1 and 2, and the Catsuit Mario, whatever that one's called, I don't know. In addition, they're also going to be bringing a new Paper Mario game to the Switch, all allegedly coming this year. Now, that's just nuts. I went and looked at my daughter's Switch, and she's put in, I've already forgotten the number, but it was like 130, 180, some 100-something number hours into Mario Odyssey. And if I can get her into 64 and Sunshine and the Galaxy games, I'll never see her again. I'm personally looking forward to it because I never played the Galaxy games outside of maybe a couple hours of the first game, because I really didn't like the Wii motion controls. That wasn't for me, so I pretty much skipped that entire generation. So yeah, looking forward to playing Galaxy 1 and 2, and then also revisiting Mario 64 and Sunshine. Curious to see if they do it any sort of remake of 64, or if it's just going to be maybe an upscaled version of the 3DS version, or the DS version, I guess. I don't know. We'll see. I didn't read that far into it to see if there was any information regarding that, but it sounds like there's a lot of Mario coming our way this year, and I mean, that's fantastic. Could always use some more Mario on the Switch. Okay, now we're going to take a quick break. I want everyone to take a deep breath and relax and meditate here with some music from Diablo 2. That was Rogue from Diablo 2. I hope you were able to rest and lose some stress, lose some anxiety, especially in this COVID-19 world. Now we're moving on to the list. The list is a continually growing record of every game I have ever played. Prior to this episode, there were 24 games on the list, but after today, because we're adding 16 games, there will be 40 games on the list. I'm going to talk about each game and then reveal its overall ranking. You can see the most up-to-date list on diredocs.com. And this episode, I'm going to try something new. In the previous episodes, when talking about these games, I've had some notes, some quick bullet points to chat about here in front of me. Oh, and I'm about to burp again. Woo! Man. Excuse me. Don't eat 3 bowls of Cinnamon Toast Crunch in a row, because it'll give you problems. I'm going to try and do this with no notes. I'm going to speak from the heart, so I'm sorry if this doesn't go so well. I'm going to do my best. I'm just going to look at the name of the game and try and chat about it meaningfully. And as stated at the beginning of this podcast, the next 15 games are all mystery games. So if you haven't looked at the timestamps, well, you're about to have a lot of fun. At least I hope so. And if you have looked at the timestamps, well, oh well. And then after the 15 mystery games, we'll discuss Mega Man 2, which is this episode's featured game. Okay, game number 1, A Boy and His Blob. So this game is about a boy who has a blob, and he feeds it jelly beans, and when he feeds it jelly beans, it transforms into various items and contraptions that the boy uses to progress through the level. And I don't think I ever owned this game, but I know I've played it, so I at least rented it, and I did not get very far at all. I think I got to... I was watching a Let's Play of it online, just to kind of refresh my memory, and apparently you go deep down into underground or something like that. I don't ever remember doing that. I remember being, out in a cityscape and with buildings and stars, and I remember getting to this point where I'm thinking I'm supposed to scale a building, and I couldn't figure out how to do it. And that was it. I didn't get very far. Back then, didn't have the internet to look up, game FAQs or what it is I'm supposed to do, so I didn't realize you were supposed to make a hole with your blob and go through the hole to go underground. So didn't get very far, but I do distinctly remember enjoying flicking the blob jelly beans. There was a little bit of physics to it. It wasn't just like a canned animation. Like, there were some canned bits to it, but it felt really good. It felt really cathartic. I guess that's all I have to say about that game. It comes in 39th out of 40, just above Marble Madness. I mean, I barely got into the game, so I can't rank it super high. Game number 2, and I'm probably going to get some hate for this one. Zelda 2, The Adventure of Link. I never liked this game. I simply adored the original. This game sucked. It just boggled my mind how they went and totally screwed up that formula. What were they thinking? Like, the overworld looks hideous. It looks terrible. The sideways combat reminds me a lot of Castlevania, or like NES original Castlevania, which Castlevania ranked halfway up the list, I think. Not bad, but not fantastic. And it just wasn't, that kind of combat isn't my cup of tea. And this felt very similar, and I'm just like, what? you go into these rooms and it's already dark and it's just like, I don't even know what's going on. And then you go into the city and there's all these people walking around. It's like, I just want to go out and stab things. And it did not meet the expectations I had based from the original. So yeah, didn't play that game a whole lot either. I'm pretty sure we owned it, but never, no, garbage game. But it wasn't too garbage because I'm ranking it 32nd out of 40 above Where in the World is Carmen Sandiego. Game number 3, and I'm going to get heat for putting this above Zelda 2, I'm sure. Gremlins 2, The New Batch. So, I only played this game once. Was definitely a rental. I don't recall if... There's something about this game that's making me think of Pizza Hut. I don't know why. I think either I was playing it and we ended up going to Pizza Hut, or we picked it up at Blockbuster on the way home from a Pizza Hut, or maybe we were just having pizza that night while I was playing it. There's just something about this game that I immediately think Pizza Hut whenever I think about it. But I remember playing this in our old house in Apopka, and it was scary to me as a kid. Specifically when you come up against one of the mutated gremlins, I thought it was real freaky. But looking at it in hindsight, it not scary at all. And the giant tomatoes that are jumping around the screen look so terrible. It looks pretty bad. Anyway, I'm gonna put this game at 30th out of 40, just above Asteroids. Game number 4, Double Dragon. I've not really liked the Double Dragon series. It's not bad. I just felt it's kind of basic. I mean, it's a fun co-op game, I guess, but I'd rather play a game like Streets of Rage where Streets of Rage feels much more nuanced. Like, you've got different moves and weapons and stuff like that. This game, it's just punch, backwards punch. That's it. I don't know what else to say about it. The music's good, I guess. Yeah, Double Dragon, 25th out of 40, just above Donkey Kong Jr. Game number 5, Lemmings. This game actually was really fun at first, and then it got really frustrating. It's one of those games that sticks out because there really aren't a whole lot of games like it, and if you haven't played Lemmings, the level starts with all these lemmings entering the world, and they're just marching along, and you have zero direct control over them. Instead, you have a very finite amount per level of abilities that you can assign to these lemmings as they're walking along. And the point of the level is to make sure the lemmings, or enough of the lemmings to meet the criteria of the level, get to the exit. And as they're marching along, there's all sorts of things that can cause them to get killed. So you have to assign them abilities in certain orders and within a certain time period to make sure that enough lemmings get to the end. And so as a young kid, the early levels are pretty simple, but eventually it gets very time sensitive and you have to know what you're doing. I would think it gets a little trial and error and you probably lose a few times, but it did get pretty complex for me, and so I didn't get very far. But there was something about controlling the lemmings that, I've used this word once already, but it was very cathartic, especially if you decided not to let the lemmings get to the exit and you wanted to do what you could to let them die. It had a very backyard messing around with anthills sort of vibe to it, if you will. Yeah. So Lemmings comes in, let's see here, 24th out of 40, just above Double Dragon. Game number 6 is Battletoads. I think, like most of you who played Battletoads as a kid, I didn't get past the jet ski level. So one of those games that you play a little bit and you have fond memories of, but you really didn't play a whole lot of it. That intro level was always fun. You're just jumping around, bashing on things. The second level where you're descending and beating up crows got difficult, and if you were playing co-op, it was very easy to destroy your partner. But if you manage to get to the jet ski level, well, good luck. I watched a Let's Play of it, and it just keeps going and going and going. And I'm like, I would not have the reflexes needed as a kid to be able to pull that off. It just wasn't going to happen. But Battletoads was still one of the, because of its difficulty and because of its visual attitude, I guess, is a way to describe it. It was definitely a popular game to discuss amongst the elementary school crowd. Not as popular as, say, Mario, but it was definitely a game that I think was looked on fondly despite how difficult it was. Battletoads comes in 23rd out of 40. Game number 7. Now, I don't think too many people have played this game, but this is a game that I do have a lot of fond memories of. Micro Machines. I've never been into cars. I've not really been into racing games, but there was something about Micro Machines that I really, really enjoyed, and I think a lot of it had to do with the setting, which was you are literally playing these toy cars and boats and stuff on top of your breakfast table or a workbench or something like that. So the tracks are, like in the kitchen example, the tracks are made out of like Cheerios, and there's like honey on the table that you go into, and it slows you down. And all of the racers had characters assigned to them, so there were like personalities and names, so you knew who you were losing or who you were beating when you got to the end of a race. And it was a lot of fun. The physics with the vehicles was a challenge. I think there was like a boat in the bathtub level too. Like there were, and it was different kinds of vehicles, right? So there was cars and boats. There's like toy helicopters. There's a few other things. It was a lot of fun. It was hard, but I thought it was really enjoyable. It was a lot of fun. Yeah. So Micro Machines comes in 19th out of 40, just above Castlevania. I guess one last thing I wanted to say about that game. In the Let's Play, which I went and looked at, there's no music in that game. That was a little, other than like the menus, I thought that was a little weird. All right, game number 8. Halfway there. Game number 8, Little Nemo, the Dream Master. I feel like this was another game that I didn't get very far in, but I still have fond memories of it. So I had never seen, at the time of playing this game, I hadn't yet seen the movie. Which, if you have not seen the movie / anime Little Nemo, do yourself a favor and go watch it. I feel like there's a version that you can watch on YouTube that probably has been taken down. I feel like it might be on Hulu or Netflix or somewhere. I know I've seen it on one of the streaming services at one point over the years. It's probably already been pulled. But that is a fantastic film. And this game, I don't know which came first, the game or the film. I'm assuming the film came first, and this was a game based on the movie or based on the story in which the movie is made. I don't know. But it's got characters in it from the game, but it doesn't seem to, or I'm sorry, the game has characters in it from the movie, but I don't think the game uses the storyline from the movie to progress. Case in point, the first level is like some sort of mushroom forest, which is not in the movie at all. But there was something magical about this game. And I think part of it was just the motif, because Little Nemo in Dreamland, it just had this, it just had this thing where it's like, wow, anything could be in this game because it's whatever you could dream up could be in here, sort of thing. I know that's really not on the game itself. It was really just on the imagination of the person playing it, in this case me. But I liked it. The music, upon listening to it, I don't remember it, but I remember being in love with the music when I was playing through the game. And there are some birds outside my window doing something really weird, so I just got distracted. Sorry about that. Anyway, Little Nemo, the Dream Master, comes in 18 out of 40, just above Micro Machines. Game number 9, Blaster Master. Played this a little bit. I thought it was weird that you are a car. Like that, you get out of the car at some points and you're playing as a person. But I remember as a kid thinking, why am I playing a platformer as a vehicle? This is so bizarre. And it was. But it was so much fun. Like, it did platforming really, really well. The story was weird, which I didn't remember until, again, I watched the Let's Play. I had to go and watch Let's Plays for a lot of these games because I've played them, so I had to rank them, and I have fleeting memories of some of them, and it's like, okay, show me something on YouTube that I can try and remember, and definitely didn't remember the story where some kid's playing with a frog in his tool shed or something, and the frog escapes and jumps outside into this radioactive box, which I don't know why you'd have radioactive material outside your tool shed. And then the frog like jumps through some hedges and digs a tunnel in the ground, and the boy jumps in the tunnel after this giant mutated frog and lands in this tunnel that has this giant vehicle next to it, which he then puts on a suit, gets in the vehicle, and then just goes driving through the terrain in the ground. And I'm like, what the hell kind of story is this? It's like, what the hell? Where'd the frog go? Like, what about the frog? Like, I don't know. Maybe that comes up later in the game. But yeah, Blaster Master was cool. You could stick the vehicle to, I can't remember if you could stick to walls, but you could stick to the ceiling. So it had that going for it, which was a little bit different from other platformers at the time. It was fun. It was a lot of fun to play. Blaster Master comes in 17th out of 40, just above Little Nemo, the Dream Master. Game number 10, Chippendale Rescue Rangers. Not as good as DuckTales when it comes to the NES Disney games, but I really enjoyed Chippendale. There was something about the mechanics of picking up stuff and throwing it that this game did really, really well. Specifically, you pick up a lot of boxes. Like little boxes, because you play as chipmunks, and the boxes either have stuff hidden under them or you just use them as projectiles. So in a way it's kind of like Super Mario 2, but the boxes are everywhere and they're stacked on each other, so it was a little bit different than the plants or the vegetables in Super Mario 2. Excuse me. And the boss fights typically where you're in this stage with a boss running around and there's this red ball and that you have to pick up, and you're just constantly throwing the red ball at the enemy. It was fun. It had the Rescue Rangers motif around it with different story bits, and you have to rescue Gadget and stuff like that. Zip could show up and power you through part of the level. It was fun. I enjoyed it. Chippendale Rescue Rangers comes in 15th out of 40. Phew, alright. I feel like we powered through those 10 games. Am I going too fast? Am I not going fast enough? I think I'm going too fast. I mean, you can't answer me right now, but I think I am going too fast. I'm going to try and slow things down for these last 6 games. Surprisingly, according to my clock here, which doesn't include the music from the meditation section, we're at about 48 minutes, something like that. I thought this was going to be an hour and a half podcast, but I don't think we're going to hit that. So definitely, probably going too fast. Whew, gotta relax. Gotta slow down. Okay. Game number 11. Mike Tyson's Punch-Out. Yes, the version with Mike Tyson, not the original, not the updated Punch-Out. I feel like I looked. No, I'm thinking of. What am I thinking of? Oh no, I'm thinking of a different game. Never you mind. Ignore me. We'll get there in a second. Mike Tyson's Punch-Out. I don't think I ever fought Mike Tyson. This game got pretty tough as a kid, but man, was it fun beating up on these guys. They were all these sort of caricature, over-the-top fighters, and it felt really, really good when you were able to sock it to him. You start off with Glass Joe, and he's a piece of cake. Like, he falls pretty quickly. But once you get to some of the larger ones, like King Hippo, and you manage to take him out, or some of like is it Bald Bull, I think was his name? It gets really tough, but a lot of fun. So if you don't know what I'm talking about, you're basically a boxer. You play Little Mac, and you're in a boxing ring with these different people, and the point is just like boxing. You're trying to knock them out before they knock you out, or before the time runs out. And it had good sound effects. It felt really good punching guys. I don't even know what I'm saying anymore. Anyway, it was a lot of fun. Mike Tyson's Punch-Out, 13 out of 40, just above Duck Hunt. Game number 12, Mega Man, the original, number 1, 6 Robot Masters, Mega Man. I remember first playing this game at my friend Joshua's house, and it blew my mind. It was like, whoa. You pick the bad guy ahead of time? Like, you straight up see the boss you're gonna fight? Like, that was so cool. Like, usually, you're playing through a level to see, what's the boss gonna be? What's the boss gonna look like? And in Mega Man, it's like, here's all the bosses. Which one do you want to fight first? And it's like, whoa. So you could do them in any order. And I remember we took turns playing, and it was so hard. That first Mega Man, well, really all the Mega Man games, it was challenging, especially for a 5-6-year-old. But we got far. We beat a couple of the Robot Masters. I don't think we ever beat the game. But that game left an impression on me. I remember leaving his house and being like, man, I want Mega Man. I need to get Mega Man. There was just something about that game that was so good. In retrospect, in hindsight, it does not live up to later entries in the series. We'll be talking about Mega Man 2 here shortly. But it was the first game in the franchise I played, and it paved the way for other games like it. And I really appreciate how difficult it was, and precision. Like, it I don't know if it invented it, but I'm going to say it did. Precision-based platforming. I think there was some of that in the original Mario as well, but Mega Man especially, because the way the enemies come at you, like, there's just one way or one or two ways to get past them without getting hit, and it's not always something you can see, and sometimes it's time sensitive, and so you've got to know exactly what you're doing. There was a lot of trial and error as a kid getting through these Mega Man games. Anyway, we'll talk more about that when we get to Mega Man 2. So Mega Man comes in 11th out of 40, just barely misses the top 10, just beats out Contra. Comes in 11th, just above Contra. Game 13 is Kirby's Adventure. This game came out towards the end of the Nintendo's lifespan. I think it came out in the 90s. I remember we were not living in Apopka anymore when I played this game. This was one of those games also that changed up platformers a bit. It had a very... If you want to think of it like Super Mario 64, how that game operates, where you're basically in a hub world, and then you go through the paintings to get through to the different levels. Kirby was similar. You have a hub world, and as you're beating the different levels, it opens up more of the hub world. I feel like it was more of a combination between, let's say, Super Mario 64's version of a hub world and maybe Super Mario 3 or Super Mario World sort of like map where you just walk around to get to different levels. I feel it was kind of similar to that. And it's a game where, you know, in Super Mario Brothers 3 or Super Mario World, it was like, oh, you got to get the item, and it was such a... Flying in that game was so important. With Kirby, you can fly anytime. You just float on up. You can only do it for so long, but... or can you? Can you just float over the whole game? Maybe you can. I don't know, it's been a while. But the main attraction here was the abilities that you can suck up your enemies and spit them out at other enemies, or you can chomp down on them and gain their abilities. You could be a sword guy, you could be a fire breather, you could turn into a giant tire and like speed through and hit all these bad guys. Like, there was a lot of cool things about Kirby that you could do, and so it was a very a very varied game from that perspective, and I think it left a really good lasting impression, obviously, because Kirby continued on as a franchise. I remember, I don't know where I would have heard this from, because this would have been in the early 90s, so didn't have internet, but it was either like news outlets or commercials or some... I remember somewhere hearing about how Kirby was going to be the next big franchise for Nintendo, and that wasn't discussed as like an ad or a commercial, I guess. It was like a news report, and you know, back then gaming was in the news. Like, it was a big deal. Like, Sonic was in the news and Mario was in the news, and all these big franchises were part of main... I mean, they were still nerd culture, I guess, which was different from nerd culture today, but it was still mainstream enough to be getting coverage on news stations, and you don't see that a whole lot anymore unless it's something extremely violent or graphic or does some crazy number that beats out like theme park or movie numbers or something like that. Anyway, Kirby was a big deal back then. It's still a big deal today, I think. Obviously, I mean, Kirby was the one that survived the initial onslaught in Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, so Kirby was the one who saved the day there. Anyway, Kirby's Adventure comes in 10th out of 40, just above Mega Man. Alright, 2 more mystery games to go before we get to Mega Man 2. So if Kirby made it into the top 10, then the next 3 are all in the top 10. So take that for what you will. Game number 14. Oh, excuse me. Man, I've got to remember. Do not, under any circumstances, eat Cinnamon Toast Crunch before a podcast. Oof. But still, go buy Cinnamon Toast Crunch. They're not sponsoring this, but Cinnamon Toast Crunch really is amazing. That's why I ate 3 bowls. Okay, game number 14. I'm gonna dare say most of you have not heard of this game. You probably don't even know it exists, but you all should know who made it. So game number 14 is a game called Mendel's Palace, or it was also called Quinty, I think is how you would have pronounced it, in Japan. To my shock, and this is where I stumbled when we first started talking about Mike Tyson's Punch-Out. To my shock, this game only sold 60,000 copies in the United States. And I played it. We didn't own it. I specifically remember this being a rental from Blockbuster. So I was one of the ones fortunate enough in the US to be able to play this game out of 60,000 copies back in the... I think this would have been the 90s at that point, because I remember we were in our newer home. So let me see if I can describe this game before revealing who makes it. I mean, I guess you could go look it up ahead of time. But this game it's kind of a puzzle game similar to Bomberman in some ways. I mean, Hudson Soft did not develop it, but they published it. So I can definitely see why. It's a game where I think you're trying to save a princess is what it is. And there's 8 or 9 different, I guess they're bosses, like these dudes and dudettes that are like, they have their own little palaces. Oh, there you go, Mendel Palace. And you have to go to each one to try and save the princess, and each one has like a different move set. Basically what it is the game plays on this giant tile board, and I don't remember if it was like 6x6 or something like that, with all these squares, and each square has all these tiles, and you can like flip the tiles. And when you flip the tiles, there could be nothing under it, and you just keep flipping, or there could be special panels that you can step on that cause different things to happen. And the goal is there's enemies walking around on all these panels coming after you, and the goal is to kill them all by knocking them off to the edge of the panel before you die. And you got to get through 10 of those to get to the boss. I think it was 10. And then you beat the boss, and then you move on to the other ones. And I'm not doing this game justice in describing how it plays. This game was ridiculously addictive. I remember when we got it from Blockbuster, it blew my mind, and I'm like, oh man, can we re-rent this? And never found it again, and now I know why, because there were only 60,000 copies. That one rental stuck with me, and when I was doing preparation for the list, so I've already gone through, I think I may have mentioned this in a previous podcast, I'd gone through and was looking up the entire catalog of NES games to try and make sure I remembered every game that I'd ever played. And going into it, I remember thinking, I need to find out the name of this game. So I'm like looking through all these games by picture to try and see if I could find the game that Mendel Palace turned out to be. And for a long time, like Bubble Bobble kept sticking in my head, and I'm like, I know it's not Bubble Bobble, but there was just something about Bubble Bobble that made me think it was Mendel's Palace, but it wasn't. Anyway, I finally came across it, and lo and behold, it's called Mendel's Palace. My mind was blown. I was like, yes, I finally found this game after all this time. And when I went and watched videos of it on YouTube, I'm like, oh, I can see how utterly addicting this game was, and I really wish I could play it today. And maybe I can. I'm going to have to go look and see if there's a version out there somewhere. I kind of doubt it. I'm sure there's a ROM, but there was just something magical about this game, because it wasn't just about pushing the bad guys off the screen. It felt very, not gambling, but it felt like a lottery. Like, as you're flipping these panels, you never know what's going to be under there. And there were all these different kinds of things that would happen when you'd flip them. There was like different items you could get. There was extra lives, but then there were panels that would flip, and if you step on all of them, then it causes like waves to go out, which would push the bad guys away. So it was frantic in a sense, but also for like a puzzle person that just wants to like sit there and do puzzles, it was a lot of fun. It's kind of a mixture of both. So here's the big reveal, right, of who made this game. So I was looking it up online because I was curious who made it, and there was, as I'm looking it up, before I even got there, I'm looking at these characters, and I'm like, there's something about these characters that looks strangely familiar, specifically in their face. Like, there's something about the eyes. Oh God, like now that I'm really thinking about it, wow, I can totally see the resemblance. I'm so excited. Like my mind was blown. I'm like, yes, this is so cool. So I looked it up on Wikipedia. I was like, who made this game? I was shocked but not surprised to find out this was the inaugural game from Game Freak. Yes, that's right. The folks that made Pokemon made as their first game this game called Mendel's Palace. It had the same composer doing the music, definitely one of the same artists who did Red and Blue, because these characters looked very similar. They were a little bit taller, but they look like they could be from the Pokemon world, from a different generation of games. And I was just, my mind was blown, because I was like, wow, I didn't realize that I had played a Game Freak game before I had ever heard, before Pokemon even existed. Like, this was before Pokemon when I played Mendel's Palace. So I don't know, I thought that was really fun and really a real cool find for me. After all this time trying to figure out the name of this game and trying to find it, only to realize that it was made by one of the biggest video game companies in the world. I mean, Pokemon is the biggest franchise. Go look it up. It is the literal biggest franchise of anything anywhere in the world is Pokemon. And it all started with this little game called Mendel's Palace. So if you've listened to this part of the podcast and I've gotten you to at least go look at a video of this game and try to find a way to play it, then I did my part, because Mendel's Palace was so much fun. And I'm telling you this based on one rental from Blockbuster. That's how much of an impact that game had on me. So there you go. Man, that could have been a featured game in and of itself. Mendel's Palace makes it into 9th place. Comes in 9th, just above Kirby's Adventure. And the last mystery game, one of the biggest games, one of the best games ever made, you all probably know of it, Tetris. Tetris, the first version of Tetris I played, was on the Nintendo. Not the version on the Game Boy, but the version on the Nintendo. And it was funny, I was looking up, I was like, oh, I want to hear the music, which the music's from the Nutcracker. I think it's the Sugar Plum Fairy Dance Suite is the tune. Anyway, I went to look it up online to hear that specific version, and all these people are talking about Ronstadt something or other. I don't remember what it was called. And I'm like, that's not what it is. But apparently Tetris has its own theme on the Game Boy version, and that's the version that a lot of people played. It was not the version I played. The NES version was the version that I played, and it was magical. Like, if I think we can take Tetris for granted today. It's very similar to other games like Space Invaders or Galaga or Asteroids. It's a very arcadey type game, but there's something about Tetris that is different relative to the games that I just mentioned. There's something basic about it, something simple, easy to understand, easy to play, but complex to master. And I think the Sugar Plum Fairy, I hope that's the part of the Nutcracker Suite that song is. It was that was actually the first time I'd ever heard that song, by the way. That music was from Tetris. And that's not really on the game, that's really more on me, but just magical memories with that game. And I remember watching my dad playing the version where you actually start the level with part of the level filled in, and there's all these gaps in the blocks, and the blocks are coming out really, really fast, and he managed to beat it. And for some reason, I remember it being a pyramid that all of the Nintendo characters were on, celebrating. But in the version that I saw online on YouTube anyway, they were like standing on these cliffs. So I don't know if I looked at the wrong version on YouTube or if my memory is just incorrect, but I feel like all of those characters were standing on a pyramid in the version that we had. Maybe I'm wrong. Anyway, I mean, Tetris is a timeless classic, and while it's not my go-to game by any stretch of the imagination, it's hard to deny the impact that game had. And it's just, I can't rank it low. I just can't. I wouldn't rank it perfect, but I'm not going to rank it like Space Invaders, like, it's like, it's a fun, classic, great game, but I mean, I can't do that to Tetris. So Tetris, my friends, comes in 4th place. 4th place out of 40. Just beats out the World of Warcraft. I mean, talk about complete polar opposites. And Tetris beat it. Tetris beat out Warcraft. That's nuts. Okay. All right. Time you've all been waiting for. Here we go. I don't know if I can make this a true featured game from the perspective of how much time I'm going to spend on it. But let's talk about Mega Man 2. Now, if Tetris came in 4th place, Mega Man 2 is getting into the top 3. So let's see where this game falls. So we already talked about Mega Man. Mega Man 2 takes the concept of Mega Man and just ranks it up. It charges it up, pumps it up to the 100th degree. The game fires on all cylinders, from its level design to its visuals. It's one of the greatest soundtracks ever made. It was so good that it spawned what like 8 different, Mega Man 2, so 6 more sequels after Mega Man 2, like in the traditional Mega Man line. There was the whole Mega Man X series, but then we got Mega Man 9, 10, I think they did an 11, maybe even a 12, like as one of the more recent Mega Mans. Mega Man 2 has a legacy, and things like metal versions of the Bubble Man theme are huge on YouTube, or there's a Flash video called Okusenman, which is based on the Dr. Wily's theme from his first level, and it's all about growing up, and now you're an adult and you're remembering your childhood playing games, and in this particular video it's about playing Mega Man, and I really don't even know what to say about this game that hasn't been said before. It's such a pure... I'm not going to say it's perfect. I'm not going to say it's a 10 out of 10 in objective terms. But subjectively, it's a perfect game. I mean, it's literally the epitome of a platformer. I just have so many good memories of this game. I'm having trouble even figuring out what I want to discuss about it, other than just saying, go play it, you know? I think the pixel art for Mega Man is what helped get pixel art as an art form to what it is today. I mean, the pixel art in Mega Man is just so clean, specifically Mega Man 2. And I'm going to talk about Mega Man 3 in another podcast, because I have played that. I know I've played some of the other Mega Mans as well. I feel like I've played 4, 5, and 6 through rentals, but I honestly don't remember which ones I've played and which ones I haven't, so I don't know if I'm ever going to add those to the list. Mega Man 3 I know I've played because I specifically remember Snake Man. Not to go off on a tangent about those, but the reason I'm bringing them up is I don't think any of them ever lived up to Mega Man 2. Like, when you talk about the classic Mega Man games, it's Mega Man 2. That's the one, right? So it peaked there, and it never got better. It certainly continued and was still fantastic, but as a franchise, but they couldn't beat Mega Man 2. Like, it was the Mass Effect to Mass Effect 2 jump, or the Kingdom Hearts to Kingdom Hearts 2 jump. The Mega Man to Mega Man 2 jump was nuts. and it was hard. It was difficult. It was glorious. I mean, I don't know what else to say. This is why I should have had some notes prepared. This is what I was afraid of. So for all the previous games, it was fine just talking about them for a couple minutes. But for Mega Man 2, I feel like I'm not doing it justice. But that's okay. I think if you're fortunate enough to have an NES Classic or NES Mini or whatever, go play Mega Man 2. Experience it how you should be experiencing it. If you don't have access to one of those, there's a few different Mega Man collections out there. So check and see if there's one on your console of choice. But if you haven't played Mega Man 2, you've got to play it. It's I'll say it again. It's one of the best games ever made. Trying to think if I have any specific anecdotes I want to share. I don't think I do. It's pure gaming. It's the purest form of gaming that you will find. One of the purest. So go out and play it. So there's two other games. So it's making it into the top 3, right? And the two other games that were previously on the list, or that are still on the list, number 1 is Final Fantasy VII, and number 2 is The Legend of Zelda, prior to adding Mega Man to the list. So I'm looking at this, and the way I do my scoring system in the background, which I'm not going to reveal, at least I don't have any plans to reveal how I score things behind the scenes, but the way I do my scoring, Mega Man 2 literally ties with The Legend of Zelda for second place. It's identical, the exact same score in how I ranked story and gameplay and visual and audio, just every single statistic that I rank, one for one the same. So now I have to look at both of these games and make a personal decision. Which one is the better game? And that's a challenge. And this is the first time I've had to do this, by the way, out of the list. There have been games that have had a quote-unquote, they've tied from an overall score perspective, but I also have weightings on some of the different categories. So because of the weightings, like, things have still been sorted in such a way that I didn't have to do a tiebreaker, but I have to do a tiebreaker now. I have to figure out which game do I prefer, Mega Man 2 or The Legend of Zelda. And they're different genres of games. So it almost comes down to which genre do I prefer, right? You've got your platformer and you've got your action adventure. And I really didn't have to think about this too hard. I really just said, okay, I'm stuck on an island. Which game do I want with me for all eternity? And I ended up going with The Legend of Zelda. So Mega Man 2 makes it into third place, just below The Legend of Zelda and just above Tetris. That is not a knock on Mega Man 2 at all. I think personally, I'd just have more fondness for Zelda. But my goodness, Mega Man 2. I'm okay. I'm done. I'm just gonna move on. I've just been tripping over my words too much. Go play the game if you haven't played it. If you have played it, go reminisce on it. It's one of the best games ever made. It's in the top 3. It will probably be in the top 10 for quite a while. There's gonna have to be some really good games coming along to knock that out of the top 10, let alone the top 5 or even the top 3. We'll see. I'm sure someday it'll move down a bit. Yeah. So coming up in the next episode, the next podcast, whenever that'll be, our featured game will be DuckTales on the NES. So be on the lookout for that. I might do a double feature with Animal Crossing New Horizons. We'll see. I'm debating whether or not I want to save all the 2020 games for a podcast special at the end of the year, or if I just want to do them as I beat them so everything's fresh in my mind. I'm leaning towards the former, especially with Doom Eternal about to get finished up here, I would think, in the next couple weeks. And then also I've been debating whether or not I want to get Final Fantasy VII now or later. I'm leaning towards now, and because of COVID-19, I'm probably just going to get it digitally. And now I'm trying to debate, do I want to get the regular digital or the special edition digital? We'll see. But anyway, DuckTales is coming up next week, and very likely Animal Crossing New Horizons. If you've been reading my website, you'll notice there hasn't been a whole lot of posts there lately, but I did start an RPG journal, a few weeks back, starting with Tactics Ogre, Let Us Cling Together. I've only done the one post. I'm still playing that game. I got to a point where I got stuck. There's a level where a character is being hunted, and I want to save him so I can continue to use him. And in the 3 or 4 battles I've played, he keeps running into the bad guys, and I can't get to him in time to heal him, and he dies. And I've read online that it's kind of luck-based. Like, in this particular fight, you have to... Then there's like a ninja that goes first, and the ninja has to paralyze him, and if he doesn't get paralyzed, then he's going to run straight into the enemy, and at that point he's going to die. So I guess I just have to start and reset. That sucks. I mean, I don't have to save him. Like, I can just continue playing the game after he gets killed, and it's fine. I can keep going. But the completionist in me, I got to see what happens when you get him. So I'm having to restart until I get a good game where I can keep him alive. So until I get past that, I'm probably not going to have another journal entry. But I am still playing that game. I'm still loving that game, so it's not over. I may start up some journal entries for other RPGs as I'm playing them. Cough, cough, Final Fantasy VII Remake. But I will eventually someday get through all of Tactics Ogre. And I'm still thinking of other content. I think I've said this now at the end of all these more recent podcasts, that I've had this idea in mind. I still don't want to share it until I've done one. I just haven't taken the time to do it. I mean, it's been a month since I even did a podcast. I'm sick of being in my podcast room because I'm in here telecommuting 45 to 50 hours out of the week, so I just want to get out of here when that's done, which is why it's been a while. But we'll get there. I really want to do this other idea that I've got, so we'll do it someday. And I think that's it. So that does it for this episode of the NieR podcast. Thank you so much for listening. Again, please check out NieRDireDocs.com for podcast updates and updates on other content. This is Sean Pfeil. This has been the NieR podcast. Wash your hands, don't touch your face, stay indoors, and thank you very much.